and she worth it, yeah. She ain't gon' front that perfect, yeah. Got rent, got bills, and the first is here. Tryna straighten out priorities.
Do you know you're racist? So, Jazzy and I came up with this list of 5 critical things that show you if you may or may not be racist or have racist tendencies. So, number 1 is assuming that people are worse off than you or need help because of their racial background. What do you think about that?
I definitely feel like that's something that has been brought up or brought to my attention when someone has been racist without them really fully understanding.
Yeah, I feel like it's exemplified in so many ways. Like when people, like let's take it out of white and black. Um, when people assume like, oh, someone's from Latin America, so they don't know English that well, or
Exactly.
they escaped from some terrible situation and probably have to work as a maid or something like that. Like assuming
Yeah. Oh,
that
yes,
they're in
absolutely.
construction or something. Yeah.
Right. Or also one that I have um, witnessed is someone assuming that because they're brown that they can speak Spanish.
Yes.
That's one that I have seen multiple times before. But also, I had a conversation with someone before. They had mentioned like, "Oh, I feel so bad for," like, it was a specific race, and I said, "Well, they're doing pretty well for themselves. Like, some people are of that race. You can't just assume that all of that group of people aren't doing well because of like a historic, because they're history, because they're successful Black people. There's, I mean, success on multiple levels. So to group, you know, a group of people assuming that they're not doing well because of like history is kind of racist as well.
It's very racist. It's like, okay, yes, we had more hurdles to jump through than you,
Mm,
which definitely need to be acknowledged, but don't assume that we didn't do it,
right. Do
you
you
know?
think that some of those people are coming from, do you think it's a malicious intent,
No,
or do you feel like it's plain ignorance?
ignorance. I don't think it's
Mm,
malicious. Because I feel like people who do that are the ones who are trying to be not racist.
right. Okay. So number 2 is constantly bringing up ethnic differences. What do you think?
Definitely.
How
Like,
so?
like you're constantly bringing up my hair texture. You're constantly bringing up maybe I like my food spicier, or
Mhm.
assuming I don't know how to use chopsticks or don't know what a certain dish is, or I only eat soul food or something of that
Right.
nature. So it's like you're always assuming things and saying, "Oh, well, you're black, you know this." Or you're
Right.
Asian, you know this. Like I know I've done that a few times, but majority of the
Hmm.
time I was joking. But some people are dead serious, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's when implicit bias comes into the picture, where you are automatically assuming, these negative stereotypes with and attached to that person. And so, there's some people that will cross the street if they see a Black person because there's been negative stereotypes attached to Black people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that happens a lot with just small little things, functioning through society, socially. We always kind of pick up on things like that. Um, so that was number 3, right?
Number three is next.
Okay, gotcha.
Number three, voicing your distaste for ethnic hairstyles.
Mm,
So I feel that this is really significant because we've both expressed that people
yes.
have been like, oh, like when you wear braids or your hair curly or something, be like, I like your hair straight.
Yes.
instead of just saying like, "Oh, I like your hair," or just don't say anything at all. If you don't
Yeah,
prefer that hairstyle,
absolutely.
yeah,
You know
why?
what? It's
Oh,
something that we both experience, right? But I think
yes,
what I've experienced as far as like in a work atmosphere, like they are heavy on the compliments when my hair is straight. And I even feel like I'm treated differently when my hair is straight,
you are. It's
you
not
know?
in your
And
head.
exactly. And also taking it back to like kind of how we were brought up and what was like socially acceptable, like the people, and we should seriously stop doing this for special occasions. We feel the need to straighten our daughter's hair because that's
Oh,
appropriate. Like we need to tone ourselves down, get the flat iron, get the relaxer, because that's appropriate for special events. And in our head, we're like, well, I can't go anywhere unless my hair is straight, because we've been molded to think like that's acceptable. That's beauty, you
yeah.
know,
Oh
that's
my goodness.
sophisticated, all of that. And that's completely negative.
That is completely negative. I never thought of it like that, but yeah, it's true. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I just prefer my hair straight, like out of
No,
all,
yeah,
like,
completely. It's
yeah.
beautiful.
But it's like when people feel the need that they need to straighten their hair or that they don't feel like they look good or that it's not done. Oh
Mm-hmm.
my, yes. Yes. I
Yeah,
never even thought of like straightening your kid's hair.
right. And
Yeah.
that's when it goes back to, you know, kind of people that look like us, how toxic we can be with one another. Because, you know, like when Beyonce, you know, and Blue Ivy, like her hair is naturally, you know, kinky.
Yep.
And a lot of people were saying, oh, you need to do something with her hair, because we feel like, oh, you know, it only looks good if it's tamed and straight, you know. And I thought that it was really so authentic and truthful of her and Jay-Z. If you see his hair, he's just natural.
Mm-hmm.
But we were like trained to believe that our natural hair was not socially acceptable.
Yeah, it's not okay. It's definitely not okay. So
Mm-hmm.
so if you tell your black friend or any friend who isn't black because everyone wears braids, these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um if you say I don't like your hair because it's in braids or and stuff like that, you're kind of being racist cuz
Right.
you're putting down an ethnic thing.
Right.
Like, so by default you are being racist. Just so you know. Just okay.
Mhm.
All right, number
And just
4.
small comments too. I'll sum it up with this one, but just small comments like, you know, if you, and I don't mind people giving me compliments on my curly hair or straight hair, but
Mhm.
like little comments like, oh, what would it, and you know, how long is your hair when it's straight, or trying to pull on our curls to see how long, like don't do any of that stuff, please.
Don't touch your hair.
We are
Yeah.
not lions and tigers and bears. Like we're not exotic animals.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so let me just throw this in here. When I would get my hair straight, sorry, this has been an experience for me as far as like my hair. That's been something I've dealt with a lot. But when I would go to like a salon that was predominantly white,
Mhm.
um, you know, the differences between my hair being curly and straight were so magical to people that literally there was like 4 hairstylists just watching this girl straighten my hair. Like, oh, ooh. And to me, I'm like, what am I, like a caged animal that you just are like gawking over? Like, I felt like that was so uncomfortable for me.
It is uncomfortable, but I mean, you have to understand that they don't do that type of hair usually.
Right, and that's
So,
fine.
yeah,
But it wasn't a training lesson. I didn't go to like a school
true.
where they were showing people how to, you know, straighten ethnic hair. It was nothing like that. I paid for it. And anyways, that was just an experience that people don't realize. Like you're kind of
You're being racist.
yeah, you're being racist right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's yeah, I get it. I
Number
understand.
4. You're like, I understand.
Number 4, Jazzy.
Okay, assuming that you know what's best to help a group become more like you.
Mhm.
What do you think about that?
Well, when I think about that, um, I think of Pocahontas.
Okay.
My mind exact goes straight to that because like if okay, if a group of people's living a certain way, and then you come in like John Smith saying, you guys need this, you guys need that, instead
Hmm.
of solving a problem that they are facing in their society that they believe they have, which they do
Right.
have,
Hmm.
you know, instead you're just imposing your views and your desires for them so that their culture is more like you. And then we can even take it to another step, instead of saying talking about indigenous tribes or,
Hmm.
you know, people who live in impoverished areas. Let's take it to Arab culture, you know, Africa, basically just all over Africa. I can't just say one, but let's
Right.
focus on Africa, like and Asian societies. But our thing has been to bathe daily, right? And so then other
Yes.
people come in and spread the bubonic plague to everyone else because they believe they're not supposed to bathe daily. And
Mm.
clearly, and then try to come up with all this false science about how bathing daily is bad for your skin and all these things, but in the same breath tell us that you need to get rid of some of the staph and all these natural things that grow on your skin. That's
Mm.
counterintuitive. Like if we're
Right.
just talking about pure science, you know,
Hmm.
things that, you know, has come out of the culture. So for you to say we're not supposed to bathe daily is disgusting.
Right.
And it's like you're trying to get people sick. But yet, because that's how you live your life, you think everyone should live their life that way.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of the same for like protesting too. Like people feel like if we're only protesting in their way, then we'll get results from it. If we're doing it any other way, it's not good enough and we're heavily criticized.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like with what we talked about before with boycotting and kneeling, you know, it's something that they don't do, and because of that it's completely wrong. So it seems like there's levels to it that are only acceptable to them.
Correct. And by then, today, in this specific number, we are talking specifically or more
Hmm.
about white people in that sense. Because just to clarify, not saying other people weren't criticizing, but um that's who predominantly was, because that's who owns a lot of the NFL teams.
Well, even people that watch the NFL too.
Yeah,
You
but
know, the fans of all of these NFL teams have a problem with it.
yeah, yeah, they did. But I found that most of the fans who had a problem with it were not people of color. But we, you
Um,
know, I'm not trying
yeah.
to be racist.
No,
I'm just
it's just
I'm
kind of
just point
speaking, you know, it's a difference. We're speaking facts and observing, you know, the truth.
observing
That's all it
America,
is.
basically. Number 5. um so this one is interesting, I think. Um Number 5, wanting to be separate but equal.
Hmm.
So, how do you think that shows up?
Wanting to be separate but equal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like if something, it's all about, I think for some people, their own agenda and what works for them. But as long as it's not kind of mixing in with what they have going on,
Mm-hmm.
does that make any sense? Like,
Yeah. I was viewing it as like it's similar to what you were saying, but just put it in layman's terms. It's like, okay, you live in the suburbs and you only want to live in the suburbs and you don't want the other the problems of the inner city affecting you.
right. And
You
then we have Karens on our hands that if there is someone that looks different than them, that live in a area just like they do, they assume that there's a problem,
mm-hmm. Like separate, being your own
you
little
know?
part of town, you know,
Right. But as long as
Negro.
some, exactly, as long as something's not messing up with their agenda, as long as you're not mixing in a little bit too much, you're good.
Exactly, you know, or you know, even when you see people coming up in life, like let's even take it, well, well, we're talking about race, so we can't take it out of, you know, ethnicity. But okay, like let's see, you see someone who came up where you knew that they used to live on the other side of town. Let's say your gardener, you know, used to live on the south side, and then all of a sudden buys a house next to you because he started his own gardening company, landscaping company. And then you're offended by this, like, oh no, these type of people who grew up this way
Exactly.
need to stay there. So I mean, I think that's basically the gist of separate but equal, because it is Jim Crow, but in a more palatable, socially acceptable, redlining way.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely.
So those are five points. And we can repeat them again. So let's repeat them together. Assuming that people are worse off than you or need help.
2 is constantly bringing up ethnic differences.
3, voicing your distaste for ethnic hairstyles.
4 is assuming that you know what's best to help a group become more like you.
And 5, wanting to be separate but equal. So hopefully this helps some people acknowledge their biases, racism.
Yeah, and I mean, we could continue this on to part 2 because I think that there's a lot other examples we could give too.
It's never ending.
No, unfortunately. But you know what? And that's the bliss of it all, is there's people like us that want to have this conversation and want to have the uncomfortable talk. But I think that's super important for everyone to become more aware of their implicit bias.
Exactly. Okay. Well, thank you for tuning in and listening to Mixed
Expressions.
Expressions.